Rock 92.7. We're back with another episode of Mahala's Music Moment. Today we have a personal favorite of mine on the show, Austin Meade. And stick around until the end of the show to hear his latest single, Blackout. Last year at Concrete Street, you opened up for Whiskey Myers. I don't know if you remember that show, because you were the first opener. Like, I was there right when the gates opened. I was so excited, and it was such a party. I remember you had a t-shirt gun for sure.
And I love that damn thing.
You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there was, I don't know why I remember this, but I can't find pictures. I feel like there was beach balls.
Yeah.
Am I imagining, but did you also have like the loser like foam fingers? Or am I imagining that part?
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
did?
have like I'm almost out of those, but I have foam fingers that I throw out during loser mentality. They're like shaped like a loser. Yeah. It's another way to like entertain, especially when you're playing those early spots where you don't really have a lot of lights or anything because it's during the sunlight. So you got to figure out how to keep things interesting and entertain without, not without being like a full on gimmick or anything. But if you go see Iron Maiden, they got their big guy that comes out all dressed up. Same thing with Megadeth. There's a lot of like theatrics or whatever to some of the older classic rock acts, which we don't necessarily have that, but we just have fun with it and try to get it to be a little bit more interactive than, hey, stare at me for an hour.
Yes, exactly. And I was thinking about it because it felt more like, even though it was at Concrete Street and it was like huge venue, it felt like we were at a house party and we were all just partying together, instead of you just like performing at us. When you're planning tours, like how much consideration goes into, what can I do to make it more of experience for the fans and more of a party for everybody?
I'm always thinking about that at some point. We always have more and more ideas of what we can do. I try to make it bigger and better each time, but sometimes like you don't have the freedom to do that depending on who's running the festival or backstage. But
Right.
I usually just do it. I don't really ask. So, and then we figure it out. We're not doing anything dangerous. It's not like we have pyro that nobody knows about or shit like that. But there's so many crazy things that go on at like the big rock festivals. I mean, I feel like we're on the very bottom, the low shock level. I mean, we were at festival a couple years ago and some chick peed on a dude on stage, and then yeah, crazy, right? Like we haven't done shit like that, but
Yeah.
there's always something wild. I think there was a festival that the band like threw out plywood on top of the crowd and let crowd surf to the back with their instruments,
Oh,
stuff like that. So
yeah. I've seen that. Yeah.
it's cool stuff, but
Yeah.
I feel like we're not pushing dangerous boundaries, but I definitely could go more beach balls for sure. And I try to make it, personal to the songs. Like the beach balls came from a music video, I think, for Varsity Type. We had a bunch of beach balls in that one, so that's kind of why we did that. And Loser Mentality, obviously, that was themed off of kind of like high school. Instead of having your high school's like foam finger, I was like, oh, I'll make it look like a loser. Try to personalize it a little bit, but I could definitely get better at that part.
Yeah. Well, as a fan, I loved it. And it was a good way to open the show too. Well, speaking of, going on tour, like I mentioned a second ago, you're going on tour with Dirty Honey, which is so exciting. Like they're such rock stars. So you're gonna have a time of your life. But can you tell us a little bit about what fans might can expect at a show?
On the Dirty Honey tour, we're playing a lot of new songs. I think two or three unreleased songs, and then we have a lot of stuff off of the Abstract Art record. So there will be a lot of that. I know that people that have been following us for a while, a lot of people are familiar with the Black Sheep record, and so that was kind of like the core of our live show for a while. And now we have switched over to the Abstract Art stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that sounds really exciting. I'm really hoping that I can go see the Houston show. I'm like, please, like let it line up with my schedule. I feel like you're kind of like in a new era, if you will, with Blackout, especially that you just released. Well, for one, obviously it was more rock influenced, and I don't know, it's just different than any of your stuff before. So I would like to know what kind of brought up this change in your music?
far as sounds go, I mean, you kind of develop over the years of playing like every night all around the country. You just kind of develop certain habits or sound. I mean, even certain frequencies that you like and don't like within your guitars and stuff. So that had a lot to do with it. That was one of the first songs that we actually co-wrote with another dude, two guys, Andrew Bayless and Dan. I think it's Dan Polarian out of Nashville. So it was me and Willie and those two guys. So kind of putting our heads together and early 2000 stuff that I listened to while I was in high school.
So I wanted to talk about Blackout and just kind of the backstory, because you mentioned that it was written after a crazy night with Jelly Roll. You said after that night, I thought, damn it, I went straight back to Blackout after I said I wouldn't. Were you kind of implying that you were on your way to sobriety and then, kind of took a little detour that night?
I don't know about full on sobriety. I just mean like getting your shit together. It doesn't have to be like super serious, you know. But I just mean, you get older and you're like, man, I got to get my shit together. And then you go out and have a good time and you're like, I still act like I'm 20, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had, and I love having fun, and I don't think I'll ever stop having fun. But it definitely wears on you whenever you do it like consistently, and you just keep touring and keep partying like hard for years and years and years. Then eventually you're like, you know, I need to pump the brakes for a minute. And usually I pump the brakes when I'm at home, like working and, just not really going out and kind of just keep myself busy. But whenever you're literally touring like the entire year straight, which is what we were doing for almost 3 years, it was like by the time you recover, you go home, you recover for like a week, then you're out for like 3 more months. And so you're almost dead when you get back. So there was a point where I was like, I'm never drinking again. That's kind of like a funny joke that you say with your friends every now and then. But for some people, it is a real thing. I don't plan on like completely pulling out of having a good time or anything. But there definitely is part of me that at some point I'm like, all right, I should probably get my shit together. Stuff starts happening, opportunities start happening, and it's hard to remember everybody's name, everybody's face whenever you're just hammered all the time.
That's true. And I think that's a really smart way to look at it, because I think just like quitting completely is kind of unrealistic in my opinion. So that's a really good way of looking at it, just like calming down. Do you feel like now you are kind of back on the track that you want to be on?
Oh yeah, it depends on the week. I mean, I have some great days and I have some days where I wake up and I'm like, well shit, that was fun, but I have no idea what happened for the last 3 or 4 hours. And that's the blackout moment. But I think too is just not taking it so seriously. Like, yeah, you had a good time, but whatever. Like you can't always be mad at yourself every time you go out and have a good time. And I think I got in that habit of like always being disappointed in myself for a long time. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can go out and have a good time with your friends and do fun stuff, crazy shit, and then just not always feel like you have to regret every decision.
Exactly. And I think that's good advice for people who are kind of struggling with that as well. And I also wanted to just say that I love just the message behind Blackout. I feel like everyone can, relate to it. But when you were writing the song, and I guess before it came out, like what were you wanting fans to really get out of the song?
Well, I wanted to write just how I felt waking up after those moments. That's how it starts. Like I smell the cigarettes. Looks like my phone is dead. Stupid shit again. Still hanging with the same crowd. So I think that just that first little couple of lines already sets up sort of a story that's pretty relatable, at least for me. Because I've done that so many times. And then just almost like the southernness of like the talk of my hometown. That's really like to me it feels like a small town thing, whether it be southern or whatever. It could be northern too. We've toured. I used to think the north was so different than us, and there are some differences, but there's a lot of small town people up in the northeast that I had no idea were so similar to us, and in the northwest. I mean, crazy. So the thought of shit, I did it again. Like, oh well, I guess people will talk about it for a while, and that kind of a thing. And like I was mentioning, the message of just not taking everything so freaking seriously. Like, it doesn't always have to be a big deal, and some dudes just get hard-ons for making everything a big deal, and it just like makes life so much worse for everybody else. Like, not everything has to be that big of a deal.
Right. Exactly. Well, I love it. And I think
fans are loving it right now.
Thank you, Austin, for being on the show today, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Mihaela's Music Moments. Austin will be on tour with Dirty Honey starting this fall. You can catch him live on October 24th in Dallas and October 25th in Houston. Tickets are on sale now at austinmeade.com.